This is the Cowboy Cruiser, which embodies a particular style of e-bike that is becoming one of the most popular in the Netherlands. It's one of the things I'll be talking about on day 6 of my bike trip around this beautiful country. This is the final day of my bike trip in the Netherlands, which saw me through many beautiful places and offered me an education in how the Dutch utilized the bicycle as a viable transportation tool. While on paper the trip would have been over 220 kilometers, by the end of this day I will have ridden a total well over 300, which is nearly a third of the 1,000 kilometers the average Dutch person rides in a year. Now if you're here for the e-bike, feel free to skip ahead.
It's a Monday morning.
It's probably windy. I should put on the screen. Okay, it was really windy. I should have put on the windscreen. It's a Monday morning and I am in southeast Amsterdam. Anyway, it's my 6th and final day in the Netherlands on this particular trip. It's a bit sad, but I'll be back in Amsterdam in a week or so for 3 days with a few days spent near Middelburg. But I wanted to show you this area that I'm in. And as you can see, it's pretty bland. But the thing I want to point out, look at this parking structure here. It's just a parking garage. No big deal. But the thing is, even when you're here in these areas, you see people on their bakfiets, people cycling around, because even here, even in these drab, crappy places, no offense, there's cycling infrastructure. And that is amazing. This is how you know you're living somewhere that cares about safety. Not only safety, but flow. The prevalence of giveaway markings and traffic circles in lieu of stop signs and traffic lights allows for some really smooth trips. For example, a week or so after this particular day, I rode with my wife to the Taylor Swift show she was attending. Now, we got lucky at a few intersections, but along that 12-kilometer trip from one end of Amsterdam to the other, we only stopped once. That makes a huge difference in not only how long the trip takes, but the reduced exertion from stop and go and the feeling of freedom from that flow just makes for a great way to get around. While not as good as the ride to the T-Swift show I would later experience, my Monday morning ride into the downtown proved quite pleasant. I even came across what turned out to be one of the busiest intersections in the city for cyclists. Here at, I'll save your ears and not butcher those names. As I continued on through Amsterdam towards the bike shop to return the beast, I realized I never gave my steed a name.
I think I'll call her Mona.
Considering all the noise she made, I thought it apt. But just a few minutes later, I said my farewell.
Say goodbye to the old girl, Mona. She won't be missed. Don't worry.
Now, I still had plenty of time to spend in the city, so it may seem odd to ditch the bike. However, I had a plan. But in the meantime, walkability, like in many Dutch cities, is fantastic in Amsterdam, and there is, of course, a stellar metro and tram network, which brings me back to something I skipped over on day 3 when I was in Rotterdam: Grassy Trams. The only piece of green track I came across in Amsterdam was during my first day, and sadly, this is the only shot of it. But what is it about Grassy Trams that makes urbanists and transit nerds foam at the mouth? Well, aside from the fact that they are very nice to look at, the green turf actually serves several practical purposes. Compared to asphalt or concrete, grassed tracks reduce noise, mitigate rainwater runoff, reduce pollution, and reduce urban heat island effect. Now, I did ride the tram and the metro, but it wasn't my plan to get around town on public transit for my final day. I still wanted to ride, and that's where this guy comes in. Most people are familiar with the classic Dutch bike, typically the Omafiets. Simple utilitarian machines that are known for their ruggedness. They are basically the AK-47 of bikes. They have a step-through frame, fenders, a chain guard, and most importantly, a comfortable, upright riding position. But as I was riding around during my trip, especially in Amsterdam, I noticed a lot of these bikes. So after some investigating, I found a shop that not only sold them, but also allowed test rides. Now, maybe my fellow North American viewers can relate, but in my experience, when you test a bike, you ride it in circles in a parking lot for a few minutes, and that's about it. But here, at least at this shop, the guy popped in a new battery, said the bike had over 50 kilometers of range, and told me to have fun, pushed me out the door without so much as looking at my ID. The model I was riding is the Cruiser from Cowboy, which is by no means unique in this space. There are other companies making sleek e-bikes like these, with Van Moof likely being the first. This just happened to be the one I could get my hands on. But this bike stands out because, in my opinion, fills the role of the classic Dutch bike in many respects. It's simple and utilitarian, but with a boost. Now, the thing I love about this bike is that it's so simple. It's so simple. It's a single gear bike. Belt drive. You don't have to change gears. You just worry about braking and pedaling, and that's it. And I don't know if it's a torque sensor or cadence sensor, but it feels really good. It had some bells and whistles, so to speak, like wireless phone charging, a dedicated app, and an auto-locking feature, but you can forget that and just ride. I took this bike all over the city to some of my favorite spots for a few hours, and I have to say, this is the way to move. While this style of bike is becoming very popular, it is of course not the only one. I am simply using it as an opportunity to gush about what I think is peak micromobility, e-bikes, which are actually taking the Netherlands by storm. As of 2021, 1 in 5 people owned an e-bike, and with the Dutch increasingly choosing e-bikes, with about 3% of the population buying one annually, that number is only going up. The elderly have traditionally been the early adopters, but they also give a boost to micromobility vehicles that are legitimate car replacements for many trips, like this kid carrier I spotted in Amsterdam. Young people are also picking them up, mainly because they kill excuses. Wind? No problem on an e-bike. Don't want to be sweaty? Ride an e-bike. Kind of far on a regular bicycle? E-bike. Hungover and tired? E-bike. Hills? Okay, not a big problem here, but still. E-bike. And finally, they are so much fun to ride. Honestly, if you have yet to ride one, go to your nearest shop right now for a test ride. You will be sold. But for as much as electricity can improve the bicycle, it does come with problems. Youths riding fat tire e-bikes has become a hot button issue, with the bikes being associated with antisocial behavior, and they are stolen so frequently that some insurance companies refuse to cover them. And something more grim, the increasing uptake of e-bikes has been accompanied by a rise in deaths, particularly in the elderly population, prompting the Dutch Transportation Ministry to encourage helmet use, something generally reserved for sports cyclists. So while they are amazing, some kinks still need to be worked out. But after cruising around for nearly 2 hours on a borrowed bike, I returned the two-wheeled wonder and went back to exploring on foot, which brought me to Pijp, a neighborhood located directly south of the city center and chock full of walkable streets, and on this day, a market that took over several blocks in the neighborhood. It hosts a feature of many spaces across the country that can easily fly under the radar: lack of noise, especially from cars. It's one of those things that can become an ever-present soundtrack for the people who live near noisy roads, which can not only be annoying, but detrimental to human health, correlated with increased stress, anxiety, high blood pressure, and even heart attacks. Which is not to say there isn't any noise pollution here. There are still cars and even noisier motorbikes, but overall, the emphasis on modes of transportation that don't include a loud, smelly car helps create environments where you feel at peace. But as I head to Amsterdam Centraal and the trip comes to a close, there was still one more thing I wanted to see before taking off, which is this. And to the uninitiated, it may just look like another canal, which it is, but underneath is actually a bike garage. While not as big as the one I visited in Utrecht, the fact that it was built underwater puts it up the list. Well, technically they drained the water, excavated 9 meters deep, and built the garage, then filled in the water again. But anyway, completed in 2023, this garage can house over 7,000 bicycles and has a direct access tunnel to the metro and central station. But what I really love about it is the art on the walls and the ceiling, giving the sense that you're underwater. But after taking it in one last time, I headed into Amsterdam Centraal. And I forgot to put the windscreen on again. But here we are, back to where it all began just a few days ago. But I feel like I've learned so much riding around this country. It's been an education. It really has. It's been really fun too. I've known a lot about the bike culture and infrastructure here, but to actually see it and pay attention to it in context and see where certain things are used, especially things like edge lane roads and bike streets, has been fascinating. So I have a lot to process, and I'll see what comes out of it. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you have already seen the culmination of this trip. So if you're thinking about taking a trip here, just do it. You will have the time of your life. I know I did. To be honest, I also learned a lot during the production of these videos, largely from the contributions in the comments along the way. While I have nothing to truly regret, if I were to do another trip in the Netherlands, I would change just 2 things. 1, I would take an e-bike, and 2, I would stay longer, at least 2 weeks, because I know there are so many other wonderful places to visit in this country. and I am truly looking forward to my next trip here. While I have gained a newfound appreciation for what makes the Netherlands such a great place to get around on two wheels, the one thing I want you to take away from this series is that there isn't some magical fairy dust here that makes better cities. It was something that the people of the Netherlands fought for and are still working towards every day. And that we too in other parts of the world can have quieter, healthier, and happier cities if we are willing to put in the work. And with that, my name is Nick. Thanks for watching. I'd like to say a special thank you to John at Active Towns. If it weren't for the showcase of Roy Simmons and his book, Feedspad, this trip may not have happened. And I will be posting a bonus video on Patreon, which you can follow for free or join up to get early access.